welcome to Bespoke Unit. Today we're going to be talking about Tabac Oriental from Mäurer Wirtz, a 1959 classic brought to you by the current owners of 4711. Now, why do I mention that? The reason being that 4711 was actually made in the late 18th century in Cologne by the Mäurer family. However, Tabac Oriental, being made in 1959, was made in Stolberg, which is a 45-minute drive away from Cologne. I mention it mostly because, well, let's see when we try it, shall we? Now, to do this review, I'm using the Bespoke Unit fragrance formula. You can download your own copies on our website, and you can use these to make your own evaluations or reviews. This was developed by Paul Anthony, Bespoke Unit founder, in 2016, as an objective and evaluative review matrix for fragrances. So, first thing you'll notice about Tabac, apart from its striking stencil logo, is that it comes in a splash bottle. Now, you can get sprays as well, but I quite like the splash bottle on this. Unlike Old Spice, where you tip it 90 degrees and you get Niagara Falls in your hand, here it's more like Tabasco sauce, and that a good decisive shake will get it into the back of your hand and deliver that fragrance. Now, we're going to just let that cook off because it's an Eau de Cologne, so the alcohol content is quite high, and then we're going to have a smell. Now I remember why I brought up 4711. Now, we must bear in mind that Tabac had a reformulation in 2014 to celebrate its 55th anniversary. And the first thing I'm getting on the head is Bergamot and lime, which is characteristically Eau de Cologne and very similar to 4711. Now, we have a bit of Petitgrain, which adds a slight bitterness to it, just to remind us that we're talking here about a masculine fragrance. And then we're starting to get some jasmine. As the citrus cooks away, we've got a floral heart that's starting to emerge, with the jasmine acting as a transitional note in between. Now, we're just going to let that sit for a while. Now, I've got some coffee while we wait. Just have a quick sniff of that. Coffee doesn't work on every fragrance. It works mostly on aromatics and fruity, but when it comes to things that are more gourmand with a touch of, well, coffee or chocolate or vanilla, like Thierry Mugler's A-Star Man, it will only heighten the previous notes rather than neutralize them. Just bear that in mind. So now we're well into the heart, and I'm getting a remarkable floral bouquet. It's a floral bouquet that consists of definite lavender, carnations, chamomile, and there's a pepper background to it, which kind of rounds off and adds some warmth, just again to remind us that this is indeed a masculine fragrance and not a woman's fragrance. Because if you think about it, something as floral as this, well, it kind of out of place in 1959. It was a very macho period. We had things like Old Spice, Skin Bracer, Aqua Velva. I mean, this would have been a woman's fragrance at the time. Now, while we're at the heart, the fragrance family for Tabac is definitely not a fougère, it's not aromatic, and although there is wood to it that we'll get to later when we get to the base, it is more of a floral fragrance, and by that I mean a floral aldehyde. Aldehyde means that to extend the floral bouquet, you have the presence of aromatic notes and some woody notes as well. Now, another thing that's characteristic of aldehydes is that you have this soapy, fatty, waxy roundness to the notes, which we definitely have here. Now, the heart is starting to evaporate, and there's sort of an oakiness that is driving us towards the base. And at this point, we're getting sandalwood, we're getting vetiver, we're getting an amber base that I would say is sort of accorded with rose, and not just, you know, normal rose. We have a very soapy rose, very waxy rose, as this is an aldehyde. Now, in terms of seasonality, this definitely sits in the more springtime fragrances. Could be worn in winter and autumn. Not really appropriate for summer because of that fattiness, because of that headiness. It would be just too stuffy to wear on a hot summer's day. Now, I've only worn this for a couple of minutes, but I wore some yesterday to try it out, and I found that although the longevity was quite reasonable for Eau de Cologne, the sillage and the projection were less so. Projection was very minimal, very tight, which meant that you had to get right into it to be able to smell it. And by the time you're right into it, well, all those subtleties, all those hints, that kind of teasing to make someone want to get closer to a fragrance, to smell more of it, well, the surprise is lost. Or, on the contrary, is nothing but a surprise and a bit of a shock as well. Because all that's left on that base as the fragrance starts to linger and starts to evaporate away is that soapy rose. Now you have a little bit of amber, but there's not much to it than that. I did ask a couple of people their opinions on it. Now the third-party feedback was divisive, to say the least, divided rather. We had people that saying that they really like this soapiness, they like this rose, they thought it was a nice change for a masculine fragrance, that it was quite pleasant. But then somebody said that it reminded them of Yves Saint Laurent Paris, which is a women's fragrance, which does actually have a rose base. And that same person then said it reminded them of a funeral parlour, and not in a good way, for the fragrances they use there. So, well, strong words, and you know that does penalise the fragrance somewhat. In terms of impressions, we're looking at, despite this floral presence, because of the rest of its build, we're looking at something that's very mature, that is going to feel out of place on anyone under their 30s, and to be honest, would more likely be appropriate for someone in their late 30s to early 40s. Time of day, you could probably wear this any time of the day, night, whenever you like. The occasion, now, I'd say that it's more casual fragrance as well, especially in that the floralness, the slight unusual bouquet, and this sort of fatty aldehyde characteristic that this fragrance has would feel out of place in more refined, formal occasions. And then finally, in terms of masculinity, conventionally speaking, of course, we're looking at something that's very faintly masculine, but then again, decidedly masculine in the sense that it would feel out of place when worn by a woman. The presence of amber, vetiver, and pepper would make this just not really compatible. Finally, in terms of presentation, so the bottle is pretty classy. It hasn't changed much since 1959 rather, sorry. It is the same stenciled logo, says it was founded in 1959. You have original written underneath. The cardboard packaging, well, there's an embossed finish that you can't see here, and at the top as well. Now this is really, really nice. It looks high quality. There's some gold lettering as well around the Mäurer Wirtz logo. But then this, we have what looks to be waves or lava. In any case, here we have a nice 1950s retro feel. Here we do as well. And then here we have something that's not quite modern enough, not quite retro enough, and sort of sits around in the 1990s, which is a bit of a shame. As I mentioned before, as a splash, it distributes really well. It's not for everyone. It's definitely a fragrance that may put some people off with this very strong, very overt floral bouquet. But then again, people might like it. They might find it refreshing, they might find it clean, they might find it different compared to all those fougères out there that dominate the market. Or Orientals, of course, but when we're talking about classic fragrances, they're mostly aromatics, fougères, yeah, the occasional Oriental spices such as Old Spice. Value for money. Now you can get this RRP, I think, comes around $24 per 100 milliliters. That's 3.1 ounces, I believe. But you can get it on Amazon for as little as $9. I believe Notino also does some good prices if you want to give this a try. Obviously you can buy in greater quantities. I think a 300 ml, I think that's around 10 ounces, comes at around $24, $25, which puts it at about $8 per 100 milliliters. So that's Tabac Original. Some will like it, some may not. It is a classic, multi-generational. It's been around for a long time. It may continue to be around for a long time as long as its popularity endures. Even though personally I'm not a fan, I find it too floral, too sweet, too heady. The aldehydes, that fattiness, that waxiness is too much for me, too much for my sinuses. I do hope it endures because I do appreciate classic fragrances such as this. So, that's that. My name's Charles Philippe Bowles. Thank you for watching. Feel free to watch some other videos. We have currently reviews on Old Spice, on Brut, and on Paco Rabanne pour Homme. Don't forget to subscribe, head to Bespoke Unit, and like our page and follow us on Instagram. Take care.